Thank you. Senator King spoke at my graduation. I'm pretty sure I had to speak after him then, too.
No, I did.
Did you? Yeah, it was you. And it's pretty, it's a tough act to follow, but, no, that's good. So this is kind of unnecessary because I've already been introduced, but I've been talking about kind of technology in schools for a long time, and I'm excited to get to, I've spoken to groups, and a few of you I think I met when you've been here previously, but in the past at my high school at Yarmouth when you come to visit, so I'm excited to get to speak to you in this context. So how I wanted to frame my presentation tonight was kind of zooming out a little bit, looking at 21st century skills that we aim for our students to leave secondary school with, and then show how through the laptop initiatives or whatever the device may be, one-to-one technology initiatives, we can achieve giving students those skills, and then kind of talk about my experience post-graduation, how that having that through high school has helped me in college. So the skills that we're going to be looking at: collaborating, creating, critically thinking, contributing, conversing, and connecting. So we're going to pick apart each of those a little bit. So first up, collaborating. So just talking about how this skill is different in the 21st century. So now we look at students needing to collaborate not only with their peers across the table, across the desk, and with their educators, but with people across the video screen, with people on the other side, anywhere else in the world or in the country. And I think that's a real skill that we need to build, as well as collaborating in multiple medias, whether it be blogs, Skype, wikis, Twitter, different forms of social media. So I think that's something that we really need to put emphasis on. And of course, having any kind of device in their hands is going to help with that. All right, creating. So here, multiple pathways of demonstrating knowledge. Really, with the technology initiative, you can encourage your students to think more outside of the box, and rather than giving them straightforward assignments like, I need you to do a poster project and show me that you know how photosynthesis works, we're able to say, you need to demonstrate to me that you know how photosynthesis works. You may use any tools at your disposal. You can make a poster project if that's how you learn best, but you may also make a presentation or a Prezi or an animation or a keynote. And there are so many tools that we kind of add to the arsenal, kind of add to the tool belt. And being able to navigate and use all those tools, being able to be as versatile as possible as a learner, I think is really important. And moving towards a model of teachers facilitating students on a path of discovery. So rather than teaching at the students, standing in front of the room and lecturing, as Senator King mentioned, we want to really move towards teachers floating around, like in this picture, and working with students in their own self-learning, because I think that's where, when students are self-directed in their learning, I think that's where the most powerful pathways are created in their minds. And this is a picture of Clayton Christensen, who wrote a book called, is it Disrupting Class? Disrupting Education, something like that. And he talks about in his book the idea of disruptive innovation. I think that's something we really have to start thinking about more, and I think to some people who have never thought about that, it sounds kind of like, disrupting class, I don't know, kind of scary, but I think as much as we can let students play, I think that's really important, because we talk about I'm a musician, music ed major, and we talk about a lot in music in the sense that when we give students their instruments at the beginning in 4th or 5th grade, whenever they start, something that we really work to is before we start the lesson, when they're in a group, we'll give them 5 or 6 minutes to just play around with their instrument. We correct any mistakes that they learn if they're doing something wrong, but allowing them to experience their instrument when they're first starting is really important. I think that principle applies to this as well. All right, critically thinking. So Senator King talked a lot about digital literacy, and my point with digital literacy is that it's more than liking technology, it's more than using Facebook, it's more than going home and watching a video on Netflix or navigating YouTube. And we really, when we think about literacy, in the past, we thought about reading and writing. Those are kind of the two cores of literacy. And now I think we have to think in the same sense, reading and writing in the 21st century, where navigating the internet, navigating your resources. You know, I got in a debate last night. I was telling Amy earlier with my roommates perfectly right before I came here today about one of my roommates' girlfriend made a remark that, you know, having iPads in kindergarten is just ridiculous. Why would we spend that money? And this launched, of course, you know, I'm fuming at this point. And we launched into this 3-hour up till 1:30 a.m. in the living room debate about instructional technology. And I think, my roommate Eric said, Janet, to his girlfriend, is it really necessary that kids know how to spell every word anymore? Or that kids know how to use a print encyclopedia? And the answer is it's absolutely not necessary, because we have these tools on the computers or on the iPads or on the internet. So I think that's a really interesting lens to look at digital literacy through. Not only can students navigate those sources, but can they contribute and create in the digital world, whether that be writing on blogs or tweeting, or how are they writing, how are they creating content. So I think we can definitely get at that in our schools. So again, you know, being able to seek information, decipher information, know what's good information, bad information, and applying those skills to not only finding information, but applying that information to their learning. And then, again, the whole idea of looking at how students demonstrate mastery of content rather than, you know, can the student, as Senator King said, complete this standardized test? Can they show that they've essentially memorized all these facts? Or can they work with something malleable and create content to demonstrate mastery? So we see that in some examples, like in Yarmouth. When I was in 8th grade, we did a civil rights wiki where we were all given a civil rights topic, and we had to basically create a web page with subtopics and subpages about this topic. And that, I think, really, you know, project-based things like that really get at really measuring mastery of content, and we're able to do those innovative things because we have the tools, and the tools today are in the machines. All right, students as contributing members or effective contributors to their community. I was just at a conference in Chicago last week, and I was able to meet a gentleman named Andrew Slack. Has anyone ever heard of Andrew? Or the Harry Potter Initiative, or the Harry Potter Alliance? The Harry Potter Alliance, there are chapters all around the U.S., maybe all around the world. I didn't look, the map was just showing the U.S., so I'm not sure. But basically what this is a group of young people who have come together and are being activists within social movements from the context of what would Harry do, kind of, or what were Harry Potter's ideals. So it's been this way that Andrew has united these young people through the ideals of Harry Potter. It's actually quite effective. And these kids are using social media and Twitter and basically uniting themselves over the internet. So one of the projects that Andrew talked about they're working on right now is these chocolates that are coming out. They started selling them at Universal Studios, I think, in the Harry Potter world. But they're not using fair trade chocolate. So the students, through the lens of Harry Potter, have created this whole social movement over fair trade chocolate. And would Harry really want chocolate being made in his name that's harvested by child laborers? So these ways of uniting kids, uniting people over different forms of media, I think is really, really, really strong. And I think if students are experiencing things like this, then their learning becomes so much more real because they can do a project around, okay, what does fair trade chocolate mean, and what social studies kind of like what is this issue, and do it through a project working with this group. And it's very easy to do. There's a school in Portland you may have heard of, King Middle School. It's an experiential learning school, and they do a lot of stuff like that. Where they'll basically pick a cause to do a unit around, and they'll touch on that cause in all of their content areas, whether it be music or math or social studies or English, and we're able to cross content area, do work cross content area, really easily with these tools. Okay. I have Hannah's permission to use this picture, so she's not mad. Well, she was a little mad when I asked her, but so talking about how students communicate with each other now, I'm really proud to say that I went to high school with Hannah Potter, which is who's up on the screen, and Hannah created a project through our high school and using her MLTI machine called NewView. I believe is it newviewus.org? Newviewus.org. And through this project, Hannah, it's basically essentially an EPAL project where kids starting out at Yarmouth High School, but now I know in other places around the state and the country, are emailing with students in Iraq, Egypt, Afghanistan, and it's been really, really powerful. It started out, I think, through some collaborative work with a social studies teacher at our school who teaches Middle Eastern studies classes, and through prompts like, what is your life passion, or what are your goals in life? I mean, these kids, I mean, when you read these emails and letters, it's just like, some of them make you want, they talk about much more than their hobbies or their life passions through these letters. And I think more that we can open up the rest of the world for our students, and the more that we can have them develop empathy for other people across the video screen, if it may be, or across the world, is really, really powerful. Skype in the classroom is something that I've just started to use. And if you haven't checked it out, it has a big presence all around the world. And teachers can go on and create an account and say basically what they're looking for and collaborate with other classes. So a lot of times in elementary school, a class may be learning about another state and be able to Skype with a class from another state, and they'll share with each other facts. Actually, I think I have a picture. Yeah. Facts about their own state. I used it last year when I was in school, my first year as a music ed major. Me and a few classmates through our instrumental pedagogy class did some sessions with middle school instrumental ensembles, middle school bands, and critiqued the middle school bands over the camera and got to basically do a clinic. So that was really cool. It's just endless. And if we don't allow ourselves to have the machines to open up the world to our students, then I think we're really doing them a disservice, because this is free and it's really, really powerful. Oh, I had a good point about empathy and understanding. I'll remember it later. Maybe. Connecting. Another few other cool things I got from this conference in Chicago. Talking about social media, Twitter, social networks, mock social networks. I did a project once in middle school where I was on a social network, and I don't remember who I was, but I was a member of the Continental Congress of the United States and had to, post status updates and comment on other people's status from the perspective of this delegate of the Continental Congress in the United States. So stuff like that. Sharing and bringing ideas together for students is really powerful. Furthermore, when their work is out there to the world, accessible to not only their classmates and peers, but other professionals in the community or other teachers, I think they take some really, really serious ownership. This is a social network that Carnegie Hall in New York City has implemented about a year ago. Chris Amos, who's the director of education and community outreach, was at this conference with me in Chicago, and I got to meet him and sit down. Basically what this is there are groups within the social network. Carnegie Hall controls it. It's a closed social network. And students ranging from ages 10 to 25 register, and they can join these groups. They're classical music, hip-hop, songwriting, jazz, musical theater, whatever their interest may be. And there are modules each week that they read, and the assignment might say, like, this week we'd like you to post a Who Are You song from a musical, so like an exposition of a character kind of song. This is who I am. And here are some examples, or you can choose your own, and then kids will post these. And the great thing is, they're communicating and critiquing as peers, but they're also professionals, guest artists, or teaching artists, as Carnegie Hall calls them. So, like, the music director for Chicago on Broadway is on the musical theater group critiquing these students, and it's totally free. And some of the things that come out of these videos and the comments is really unbelievable. So Chris was kind enough to give me an account, and he gave me 4 accounts for students. So one of my one of my musical theater students up in Brewer, it has an account now, and she just started posting. So she's starting to get, like, in a lesson, we'll record something, I'll play for her, and then she'll post it and get a critique from this Broadway music director. So it's really unbelievable. And it's a really cool model for the arts in general. And this kind of brings me to passion-based learning, which kind of goes with this next social network. This social network is managed by the Digital Youth Network Project in Chicago, and it's called Remix World. If you're interested in a social network like this, after I talk about it a little bit, you should Google it, because the platform is available for they'll give it to you, and set it all up for you for any school, and they'll also do PD, virtually or in person. So Google that if you're interested. But in this school, they have this really interesting model where school time is for standards-based learning, controlled after-school time, which is the kids are still at the facility in school, but after-school time is for passion-based learning, and then at home is for self-paced learning. So the social network really comes in the passion-based learning, where after school the kids can join a group about creating videos, creating music, digital storytelling, whatever their interest or passion may be. And then same kind of model as the Carnegie Hall thing, they'll upload it onto the social network and critique each other, and teachers or guest artists in the Chicago area will critique them as well. The cool thing that they do is that the classroom teachers then integrate this into their teaching. So when they assign certain projects, they'll say, I forget what the term they use for it is, but they'll say to the kids, okay, you can use, it's media. You may use your media of choice that you work on after school, the group that you're a member of, to do this project. So you have 4 kids in the class making music videos about whatever concept they're working on, 4 kids in the class making an animation or a movie, 4 kids in the class doing a digital storyboard on VoiceThread or something like that. So it's this really, really wide range of learning styles. And this is a middle school program still. They don't have a high school yet. But they had some kids there who were high school students who had gone through the middle school program. And this one kid, he was in health class. He had to do a project on drinking and driving. So all these kids come in with these little, printed off just regular sized papers about, these little posters about drinking and driving. And this kid made an iMovie with some photos and music, and he laid his voice over it. And the teacher, flipped out. Thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And this kid's like, oh, it's no big deal. I do this every day after school in middle school. So I thought that was very cool. And it's a really great model for supplementing curriculum with things that kids are passionate about. And I think that's where you get really, really powerful, really fueled learning, is when kids are able to do something that they're passionate about to convey that they know what they're talking about, or that they're doing what you're asking them to do. All right, so we've gone through all of the 21st century skills. Why is technology in the classroom important? The big thing for me, and through high school and still, is the whole ownership principle. I just think that when kids put their work out there, and when it's out there on these networks for the music director of Chicago to see, they really, really are invested in it. And they're really fueled and excited about it. The other principle we talked about, having the world at your students' fingertips. So, if you can't take your students, which none of us can unless you live there, to the Grand Canyon, they can go online and watch a airplane fly through the Grand Canyon and have that view. And will we be able to do that with books? I mean, we'll be able to see pictures, but the experience becomes so much more real and so much more rich for them. It's also encouraging this conversation last night with my roommates got into this. We got into innovation, and somehow we got into solar energy and wind power. But this whole idea of innovative thinking, when kids get out past high school, we really want them to be able to problem solve on their feet, be innovative with their approaches to solving those problems. And these are the tools by which they're going to be innovative. So in essence, my big point last night in this conversation, my roommate's poor girlfriend was probably so annoyed with me by the end of this conversation, but if you don't give your kids these tools, in essence, you're really cheating them. You're really doing them a disservice, because I think that when they get out, this is what they're going to be confronted with. We talk about it all the time at my school, at the College of Ed, where we need to prepare teachers, pre-service teachers, to use these tools when they get out, in Maine at least, because we know that this program exists. Because if not, they're going to get out and they're going to be handed a machine, and they're going to say, what am I supposed to do with this? And then last, creating those skills and those tools of inquiry. Students asking questions all the time. That's really, really good. I did practicum, my non-music practicum, where I was in an elementary school classroom with, is it Deb White? At Asa Adams? Yeah, some of the Maine people may know Debbie White, in Orono. And, the first day some kid came up to her and asked her how to spell, I don't remember the word. It was something platypus or something. She's like, why are you asking me? There's a computer right over there. And I think that's really, some people would kind of, She didn't say it like that, all right? It didn't sound that. But the point was that these tools are there for kids to use, so why not teach them to use them? Why give them the answer? Why not make them go find it? I think that's really, really important as well. So, talking about my college experience a little bit. In terms of like management, yeah, it's really, really important. And not just time management, but managing your relationships with your professors and your relationships with your peers, and peers that aren't necessarily your friends, but more like colleagues. And I think that just using the tools through 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade has prepared me really, really well for being able to manage my time well once I get to school and be able to manage those relationships, know how to send an appropriate email to a professor, and be in the habit of checking my email a lot, because I have classmates who will say, oh, wait, there's a paper due today? Yeah, well, she emailed us 6 days ago telling us there's a paper due today, and so, that whole thing. Talking about networking a little bit, especially in fields where it's a pre-professional degree program, like I'm in an education program. I think it's really important in those kind of programs where you know the people in the area that you want to work in your field, and you are active. And the Facebook conversation comes up a lot in my classes. Like, every once in a while we'll get the lecture, and it's very true, it scares me a lot. When you get out student teaching, you got to go through and either delete your Facebook entirely or totally clean it up, because God forbid there's anything on that, pictures or anything, and you get in so much trouble. And so I think knowing how to use Twitter and all those social media devices is really important for pre-professional work. And of course, when you get out and you are a professional. Digital footprint, digital citizenship kind of goes along with the same thing. The more and more I see with classmates that the kids that had digital citizenship work when they were in school, talked about what that means to be a good digital citizenship, or be a good digital citizen, are really successful when it comes to handling themselves professionally. Because in reality, there used to be you could handle yourself really professionally in person, and then you could handle yourself really professionally online. But now I think they're totally intertwined. And how you handle yourself as a professional is just as relevant on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, as it is at a conference in person or just going out to dinner with your friends. And then lastly, in college, you're kind of on your own in a sense as a learner, especially if you're at a bigger institution like I am. So you really have to have learning strategies. And if you have the tools, some kids graduate high school never having used a laptop in a school setting and then get handed one as a graduation present and are all of a sudden, expected to know how to use this effectively in school. And I think if you're working with those tools and learning those strategies, using tools like Quizlet to study using flashcards, or, using collaborative principles of Quizlet, or Google Docs, or SlideShare to do study groups and share information amongst peers. If you're using those before you get to college, it's extremely helpful once you get there. Again, just reiterating that same point, you have a wide array of tools in your tool belt if you already know how to use them. This actually, Ben Nickerson, who I went to high school with, coined this term, or has used this a lot. I see a lot in big lecture classes, people just sitting up with computers and on Facebook or on iChat, just totally zoning out during class. And then you have the 20 kids in the lecture hall who went to a high school with a really strong technology program and are sitting there taking notes. So I think that when we're trained, in a sense, to use these tools in high school as tools and not as toys, then when we get to the lecture hall in college, we're more apt to do just that. I've also gotten some really great opportunities to teach a lot of my peers about these tools and show a lot of people how to use them effectively in school, and I think that's been really great for me as a pre-service teacher. And when I graduated Yarmouth and got to college, I remember having conversations with Mrs. Barr I showed up the first day of I used to be a nursing major. It's a long story, but I showed up on the first day. I went to my anatomy and physiology class, and I brought my iPad thinking, like, this is going to be great. I'm going to take all my notes on my iPad. People looked at me like I had 4 heads. I mean, it was so awkward. And I didn't bring my computer to class or anything like the whole rest of the semester. But I was able to, like, secretly in the library show some people some things on computers, which was really great. So, but I think we need to be encouraging students to move on with this stuff more, too. Another Yarmouth graduate has used this term in conversations with me, Zach Hines, before. I think in high school, the goal kind of before you graduate high school is to learn how you learn best. And now, with the 21st century and with all the things that we are exposed to outside of school, for a lot of kids, how they learn best has to do with these machines. And if they realize that in high school, then it's not as much a struggle once they get out. I think that's a really, really important point to keep in mind, that having these tools for students to learn with is just, it's the most powerful thing to be able to leave high school and be secure with your learning style and be secure with the tools that you have in your tool belt to use. And it's definitely helped me a lot. So this second to last slide maybe. Has to do with just some quick tips for if you're starting a program in your school, your district, or you're thinking about it, whatever. Senator King spoke a little bit about this, how it's not about the machines really, it's really about the culture, and people come to Yarmouth all the time, I know from bringing groups around on tours, and they're always like amazed like that we're not just sitting on computers like robots all day. And the conversation that we then get into is that, well, it's not really about having the computers out all the time. It's about the culture around using the tools that the computers allow us to use. So the computers are essentially just the new chalkboard or the new pencil box, the new pad of paper. And that argument last night, we finally got to the point where I was like, Janet, this is my roommate's girlfriend, you know that these kindergartners aren't just using iPads all day, right? Oh, really? So, it's not about being on the devices all the time. It's about the culture around the devices and the 30 minutes a day in stations, and one station has a few iPads at it. That's what's powerful. It's not having kids sit on iPads all the time. Again, like the toolbox thing, the machines it's not about the machines, it's about the tools that are on the machines and knowing how to use them. As Senator King said, setting the bar high for students and faculty is really important. That goes into professional development. But along with the professional development, I think it's really important to give students, that might be the next, yep, there we go. Give students a lot of ownership in these endeavors. So like at Yarmouth, when we roll out 500 some odd MacBooks at the beginning of the year, we don't have a faculty member, any sort of faculty member or administrator running that rollout process. It's all run by students. And I think when students are in the driver's seat, that's when everyone kind of gets behind it. And Senator King talked about it from the perspective of faculty and having people get behind it. But I think it's just as important having those student leaders in your group. And something that we do at Yarmouth, too, is we have students assist with professional development. So we actually have students teaching teachers a lot of the times. And that happens on a daily basis in every single class. But in a more formal setting, it does happen in professional development. I think that's incredibly important, and to make sure that like teachers and students are both comfortable with that, because that whole collaborative practice is what we should be doing in our schools. It shouldn't be that there are at least students sitting in nice little rows and there's this one person standing at the front of the room above everyone else talking at them. It should be this collaborative process of learning together. And that's how we create lifelong learners, is modeling for our students that we are lifelong learners as well. Okay. Questions? Hopefully. I kind of moved through that all quick, but I was hoping that we could get a few questions, because I think that's where some of the best... People always ask me questions that I can't answer, and it forces me to like actually think about something, and some kind of good conversation comes out of it. So, well, I will be here tomorrow for the day, and I haven't been to Sweden before, and I hear that teachers are very well paid over there, and I'll be looking for a job in 2015. So if anyone has any leads, feel free to let us know.
I knew there would be.
Yep.
You said you mentioned in music. You play an instrument?
Yes.
You compose music?
No, I try. Well, I've had to write. I play. I've had to write a lot of compositions for like theory classes, and I learned very quickly that I should just stick to playing other people's music and not my own.
What instruments do you play then?
I'm a double concentration in woodwind doubling and piano.
So you actually
state
the instruments.
It's going to sound excessive. Oboe, English horn, flute, clarinet, saxophone, and piano.
Okay, my daughter plays the oboe.
Oh, really?
As well.
Yeah, I just started oboe last year because I play a lot of musicals, and now with these new musicals coming out, it's all like, it used to be like you would get away with just playing clarinet and sax, and now they want you to play like flute, oboe, bass clarinet, sax, piccolo, like, so picked up oboe. Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
I'm just curious, you go to Orno, and I don't know what the demographics are of in-state students to out-of-state students at Orno. And I'm just wondering what you hear as conversations to students that didn't have the opportunity that Maine has been.
Most of the, I would say most of the education majors and goes for most of the music education majors as well are from Maine. But still, within the state, there are great varying degrees, I think, to like, even though they may have the laptop, how they're used at the school. We just had some teachers come back, and speak to one of my classes, my secondary music ed class. They had just graduated like 2 years ago, and the thing that they came back and said was, you know, once you get out, this girl who's teaching, I can't remember where she's teaching, somewhere up north, she said, yeah, once you get out, it's all, they want you to do it all on computers. And I'm like, I've been saying this for like a year, and everyone thinks I'm crazy. I would say in general, like most of my classmates didn't have as rich of an experience as I did, and that they're really not, in the music world, what frustrates me is, well, I'm just going to be doing band rehearsal. I don't need to use a computer. And that happens a lot. And I'm trying to like have these conversations with classmates, but at the same time, I think that kids' experiences both before college and in college have kind of set them up for not worrying about it right now. And then they get out and they're handed a machine, and the principal says, yeah, you have to demonstrate this, this, and this in your portfolio, and they get into this really sticky situation. So I think that where it starts for having good educators in the schools here in Maine is at the university, well, before the university level, but at least right now at the university level. And there is a course called Computers in the Classroom, I think, or Technology in the Classroom, something that I think there's like 2 sections of it. And it's an elective, it's not required, so no one really takes it unless they're about to graduate and they need an elective, and so they take it because it's probably an easy A. So I think that should be required. You know, I think a course like that should be required. I think that's where we start, is at that level. Trying. They don't. I'm very loud about it. They don't really like it right now, but we'll see. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
I was going to see if we could ask a question.
And that, Janet to Auburn. Folks, concludes what I think has been a very long day for many of you. Amy, can you say a few words about tomorrow morning, please?